You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. All right. So tonight, joined by Rob. Mate, I firstly love your hashtag handle, whatever you call it on Instagram, the Venison Diplomat. That's awesome. Where did that come from?
I was, weirdly enough, I've only once done a bit of van life, and it was my wife and I when we had just done IVF, and we thought we've got to get away for a couple of weeks and make this work. And I was heading down the south coast where we've now moved to, and from what I understand, close to your heart. And I was just lying in this van one night, couldn't sleep, was just thinking about just hunting and all these sorts of things, and thinking about starting an Instagram. And it just came to me. Just thought, like, what am I about? What do I want to do? Like, what's my goal with this? And as someone who came in as an adult onset hunter, it was that venison diplomacy type thing that got me into it and kind of got me started. I found a few people that weren't combative with it, that were really open with information. And I thought, that's me. That's what I want to be. That's what I want to do with it, and have fun with it. Make it fun. Make it part of life. Make it a way of life, but make it fun. Like, I didn't want it to be too serious. I wanted it to be like about mates, about friends, about people trying stuff they haven't done before, like myself. Yeah, so that's kind of where I came up with it. And I just remember the time that I thought of it, but I don't remember the exact thought process to getting to it. I just got it, and like these kinds of creative things, once you hit it and it feels right, you just run with it. And look, and I call myself Rob or Robbie Baldinger, and that was more of a dig at me by one of my mates when we go, bowling in the nets and stuff. And they used to always call me, instead of Dougie Bollinger, they'd call me Baldinger. And so I kind of it's kind of become my pen name now. Yeah, Robbie Baldinger. So that's a shout out to a couple of my mates. That's what you do. Yeah, when someone's giving you a little bit of cheek and bullying you got to double down and go with it.
Yeah.
And the people here can't. They're listening to us. They can't see. I'm bald. I've been bald since I was like 17 or 18. And I'm also in my pajamas. So Oz Hunting Bed Bath and Beyond has become tonight Hunters in Pajamas.
You said.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do this. And then we're on sleep training tonight. So I'm like upstairs and I'm on the 10 to 11:30, keep the baby in the cot duty. So I'm ready for everything.
Kids are great fun. We were talking off air because I try to be a bit flexible recording, and it's not so much for others, it's more for myself. I'm pretty lucky. My kids are pretty good, so my twins go down generally always before 7, and they're pretty good now. They're just out, and the eldest is pretty good. Once he's had his little stories and whatnot, he's down around 7:30. So it was I like to have that buffer just in case, because there's nothing worse than saying, hey, let's start at 8, and then messaging, can it be 8:30? Can it be 9? And just, it's a stuff around. So I like to just go, no, look, 8's, I'm usually pretty comfortable, but, and you're sort of similar, got ready.
Well,
time,
my background noise
nice.
Right now is I can hear like 2 stories up from here. I can hear like the toddler messing around and the baby kind of making his kind of sleep coos, but that's life, hey. You got to kind of
just roll with it.
You got to roll with it. I work on articles all the time, and I've been playing around with this idea. It's it's more on the risque side of things, but hey, trying to write comedy, you got to kind of test the boundaries a little bit. But there's the suffragette movement, women's rights, and I'm kind of thinking about what about hunters' rights? Like, what about the suffragette movement? Like, what about us? We got to we're holding down jobs and trying to keep the house together and help with kids and stuff. Of course, our wife does all that stuff as well. And then doesn't complain about it, and probably, often doesn't have a passion that takes as much time as what we do. But come on, let us go out hunting. I just want to go for 3 days and not be in phone reception. It's kind of, what about our rights, us suffragettes? Anyways, I'm playing around with that at the moment and trying to think of, how to play it in, and, a call to arms, a call to action. All the lads out there who just want to be out doing their own selfish passions like hunting, which can be a bit like that. But, getting kids into it would be the ideal scenario, that's for sure.
It's that balance, isn't it? I I want to go out for a couple of days, but I'm mindful that then I'm leaving the wife at home to deal with the chaos for those days.
And you know what? The guilt of that and the pressure of that it actually plays on your hunting performance too. Like your mindset, you're out of the woods. As much as you want to be there and switch off, when you're thinking about that stuff, or when you're getting the phone calls during the day, it takes you back out, and it definitely impacts me when I'm out there. I think about it and I feel it, and I go, I need to be successful. Like the pressure to go out and do what you need to do makes you less successful. It's such an irony. It's like when you're rushing, or when you're thinking too much about it, or when you're worried about what's going on at home, you just don't do as well.
I find I feel guilty if I'm going home with nothing, because I feel like I always say no hunting trip is wasted, or any time in the bush. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm just going out for a hike. It's not wasted time. But when I go away hunting, the objective is to bring meat home. And when I come home empty handed, I feel more guilty that, I've been away for a few days. The wife's had to handle everything. And look, she doesn't complain. She's an absolute
I was about to say, guess what? They say
She's
nothing. They're like, oh, did you have a good time though?
Oh, no, mine doesn't. No. So maybe yours does. Mine hammers the crap out of me that I don't get anything.
Right, because I went on like a 4-day hunt with a mate, a good mate, only sort of late March, like pre-rut kind of thing, and just hadn't kicked off yet this year, as everyone will tell you. It was a little bit later for some areas. And yeah, we went out and we were holding the trigger on so many deer waiting for a buck, and ended up on the last morning, in the last hour, knocking something over just so we had something to go home with. And my wife was just like, oh yeah, but I didn't shoot my gun at all for 4 days. Like, which, as someone who loves to go out hunting, like that's, takes a bit of a challenge. And the first thing she said was like, yeah, but I don't care. Did you enjoy, like, we've got deer here. You're driving past deer to get deer. So I'm not too concerned about it. And here I was this whole time racking myself with the guilt of not coming home with much, just with half of probably a yearling or two doe, like nothing for 4 days effort and 8-hour drive each way. They don't care. She's just happy to have me back. She's happy to hear the stories, and she's happy that she knows that I need to do it. Like, I can't not do it anymore. It's already imprinted on me, and that I've got, getting out and doing it like recharges me. It kind of gets me through another month or two of, in that case, another week until the rut actually started, and then I was ready to go again. And yeah.
No, I say mine's the opposite. My wife is very good at stirring me up, and it's one of her favourite pastimes. So,
at least she's having fun with it.
She has a great time with it, and I think she gets more excited when I come home empty-handed than when I come home with something.
I can rib
something
him now.
happens. Yeah, she loves it, and then she gets. It's worse when I get Frank on the phone, and I try and avoid Frank being on the phone with my wife, and listeners will know Frank from being on the podcast a few times, because both of them, he just baits her into smashing me, and she just takes full advantage, and it's just a compile on me all the time. But look, it is funny. I think it's good. It's how we communicate and muck around too. So it's one of those things.
Now I think about it, that's like, I kind of always toy around with doing things. Like, I'm one of those people that kind of starts a bit of something and kind of does a bit of it, like learns a little bit about it, and then kind of moves on to the next thing. And my wife ribbing me about something actually got me into another one of those little like hobby passions, which was a bit of bush poetry. And I'd said I was going to write some after learning about it, like hearing some guys and girls do it up in Scone when I was up there. They do like some bush poetry breakfasts and stuff. And one morning we woke up, and like, it was a freezing winter's night, and she was still in the blankets for sure. It wasn't me, but we had this argument, like a legit argument, about who was actually, controlling the bed. And she's like, why don't you write a bloody bush poem about it then, you sook? And I was like, I will. So I did. And so it works. And you would go like, all right, I will get one next time. And then you'll go out and probably
not
do it. Not yeah. If only the deer or other target species
played along.
They just stood there in that perfect position, just waiting. Yeah, as we know, they never do. And then the time when you're not ready, they're ready.
Man, I always say the deer gods have got it out for me for whatever it is. The last trip away, I came home when it was up Nundle with the Hunters Campfire guys, and man, it was just chaos. I smashed
Nundle's a hard spot it's a hard spot to hunt, mate. Like, for any,
it was a nice spot.
It's beautiful. It's just obviously deer, pressure deer. They're quite active. They're quite mobile, and springtime up there. That's the time they really settle down after all that kind of pressure during the rut and pressure during winter. I've found spring up there is the best. But yeah, sorry, you joked about like the deer gods, and that's another thing I always think about. Like, there's this like great buck in the sky. Like if hunting was actually a church, what would like Profty would probably be the Jesus of hunting, yeah, the Messiah, bringing us to the public lands. That's kind of, I've been thinking about that kind of as another little thing to throw into an article. I might have even put it in the last one, such as the drive that guys like that have on me, and getting into this sort of stuff, like watching those guys really take like that raw approach of like, this is exactly what I do and how I do it, and stuff goes wrong, or like the best thing about him is the celebratory stuff. Like, it almost seems over the top when he gets stuff, but you can tell he means it. Like, it absolutely means everything to him. So it is kind of a bit of it is becoming a religion, isn't it? It's a bit of a church. Maybe that's how we become more powerful as a group of hunters. If we do actually start something like that and get everyone on board, we might actually get some traction instead of being a sort of second-class citizens or downtrodden all the time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was watching today. I don't know if you follow Jake Nicholson on Instagram, and I've had him on before talking about the crap going on down there in South Australia and the aerial culling. And he posted this video today, which I always sit there and have a giggle. And the go-to is, we need to aerial cull in places where hunters can't get to. And I was watching this video paddock, again today. Yeah, open paddock. You literally see the helicopter chasing this herd just in the open, and just shot after shot after shot. And it's just ridiculous. And you just sit there and go, this is just so rubbish that they're trying to ban, well, they are going to ban bow hunting in SA, but they're happy to say that this aerial culling is the best approach. And you watch this video, and I shared it on my Instagram, and said jump over to Jake's to watch the whole thing, and he wrote it up really well about it. You got to wonder who's making the decisions and how. And I just don't think, to be honest, people care. I think the reality is,
it's kind of
I don't care.
Like, I guess lobbying's at every level of government, and it's about who's got the ear at the right time with the right person. And it can work both ways, like that exact approach. So one thing in New South Wales that I couldn't believe wasn't a thing, after watching, like Meat Eaters had a couple of episodes, like they do a lot of bow fishing for stuff, and certain states have rules on it. Of course, there are target species, like a logical one, carp.
Yep.
I'm going like, why don't we do that in New South Wales? This is when I was living up in Scone, and we were in the middle of a drought, and we're talking about all this stuff happening in Western New South Wales, the mass fish kills and lack of water. Just seeing these like rivers of carp, including where we were. Like, I could go into the river and the water was 2 centimeters thick, and these things are just making their way up into it, chomping at anything that comes past, sucking the foam, just rubber lipping. They're just and I was just like, this is really odd. Like, I don't understand why that's possible. And so, right place, I was in the constituency of like a bunch of nationals. The right time, they were in power, including like the nationals from the federal government, who happened to be the deputy at that time. And the other guy in our area, north of my area, was like the agriculture and water minister or something along those lines. I was like, I might just write to them and see what they think about it. And it turned out, we'd done that trial. They'd already done a bow hunting trial by the DPI in New South Wales, and it was successful. And it just but there was no appetite at that time to actually see it into anything. And within like a month, he just grabbed it and ran with it, and now it's legal. So it can, like, you have to reach out to the right people at the right time. I know it's huge. I know it's a very different scenario for those two, and people are reaching out, and they're probably being like, just ignored. But like, there's these other things that are going on that we can kind of try and gain ground on that also people don't care about, but we do. And we can grab at those things and try and bring them back into the fold, so that there's another thing that we show, hey, like, we're part of the solution, not part of the problem here. And deer's the exact example of it. I wish they had numbers. Like, imagine if we had numbers in New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia at what we're actually harvesting every year, but there's no way that they record it. There's no mechanism for it because they're now, at least in New South Wales, they're listed as a feral species. It's open season.
Yeah.
There's no way to keep track of it. Imagine the numbers we could pull if we had a way to keep track. I mean, how many? I've shot 3 deer this year, like a couple last year, a whole bunch the year before. Like, you can, everyone can go through the list of what they've got and sum it up, but there's no mechanism for the government to count that. I think they don't know if they really want. I guess they do want the numbers, so they just don't have a way to.
I don't think they do.
They do a survey, and that's kind of wild guess at what it actually.
I think it's smoke and mirrors. Look, at the end of the day, I look at it and go,
too many people to appease, mate. Like, it's too hard for them to do it.
So
they're trying to be tough and trying to make decisions, and in that case, they've gone, we're going to be tough. This is our opinion. We're going to go tough this side of it. We're not going to go tough on your side. We're going tough on the other side.
I don't even think it's a side. I think the biggest problem with our political system is that they're doing decisions that they think are going to get them re-elected. And that is where we fall short, because I think in the politicians' eyes, and I'm not talking about shooter farmer fishers, I'm talking about just the two majors, they don't really care about hunting. And guns is a real sweet spot for them, for the general public, because people are scared of guns, especially if they don't know it. And the reality is that's the majority of our population now. And there becomes a problem for us in the sense that we're not big enough to capture their attention to completely chase our votes. And that's the biggest issue, because if you think about it and you look at it, they are only making decisions of what they feel the public want. I mean, look at what was the last one? The Voice to Parliament. We wasted so much money on that. And that was done because that our Prime Minister thought that was what the public wanted, and it backfired massively, and we wasted so much money. The cost of living's out of control. He's spending like crazy. I think he's the worst PM we've ever had. I think he's horrible, and I'm not Labor, Liberal, I'm neither. I just look at them as what they're doing. And I just sit there and just go, we are wasting money like crazy. We continue to, and there's options to fix things, but there's not enough numbers of votes. And that's the key problem. I would love a political system where they got one term and they're out. Sorry. So then let's actually make decisions that are for the good, for the long term. Actually look into things and actually be genuine and honest, not going, oh, this is probably better, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to piss people off. And so many decisions are like that. Like that's how I personally feel. I look at some of the crap. Like they've just talked about wiping HEX debt and not charging it going forward. That to me is ridiculous. Like what's going to happen is that there's going to be more intake from universities because they're going to make a massive amount of money off the government. People who would not normally go to university because they're going to have to pay the money back, and they're going to go for the sake of it. Oz Study.
But it still costs a lot of money beyond just the HEX debt to go to uni. That was the biggest thing that was going to stop me going, and I got lucky.
Well, it does, but
I applied for a scholarship, and most of the cost for me was just the cost to live in a place where there was a uni. So
yeah, and if you got to move, I agree. But if you're in Sydney, it's not.
Yeah,
if you're in Sydney,
if you can live at home and stuff, like I lived away from home.
Correct.
But I mean, the first year I got lucky. It was $120 a week, and in a public in our university accommodation.
Yeah.
But I was in a room with 2 bunk beds.
Yeah.
We had a desk under it and a bunk on top, and me and now a mate of mine lived in for 1 year. But you don't get much of that. Well, you do get a lot of that. It's just like there's a bookshelf between you and another person. You share in the same room, and you're both paying $200 a week. It's still a very expensive.
I'm not saying
and
it's
the
not.
HEX debt wiping part of it, when applied in the right way, could be amazing. Like, example, rural GPs that are getting their HEX debt wiped if they do X amount of time in an area of need. Bang on. If you want to solve a problem, you're going to solve it in 5 years' time. But if you want to solve a problem, that's one way to do it. Because you know how it works out here? The only people you get out in these country areas tend to be the doctors who have, who have immigrated to Australia and have trained overseas because they have a moratorium. They're forced to work in rural and area of need for an X amount of time to get those years under their belt before they can work wherever they want. And a lot of them do end up back in the city, but that's why we're down here. My wife's working as a rural GP and from Canada. So it worked in that respect, and it sent us around all these different places. But those are very kind of like drilled in precise ways to try and adjust it.
But now you're making sense. So that's that is a sensible decision rather than put it in, because the current dropout rate, or the last stats I got on dropout rate, was in the first year, 68% of students drop out of university. So if we're now going to pay and pick up their bill, what for? They're not getting through.
Do you think that they would still drop out or not?
Yeah, 100%. They're not. Look, without going into how it's done, you know, if you come from certain universities, if you're in the local area, you get 10 ATAR points. If you do a program with them, you get 10 ATAR points. If you're a certain cultural background, you get 10 ATAR points.
You can point up to get in.
You're automatically going way above your actual abilities just because you're given preference. And of course they're dropping out. So that if you've got a 60% dropout, and that's people knowing that they had to pay the money, right? Yeah. I reckon there'd be a lot of people sitting there going, I'm not going to go to uni because I don't think I'm going to do that well, and I think I'm just going to rack up a bill and I'm not going to finish. That is crazy. Now covering
on the point side of it, I had mates that didn't do as well, got the extra points from Broome Regional, and the focus that they had and the way they got through the degree, they're still civil engineers like myself. So I don't know. It's all this stuff is. I'd
like to see the top end.
They always say never talk about like politics and finances and religion, but you kind of have to because it's life. But this sort of stuff is just so challenging. All I know about is an individual who's benefited from a system that, like a cadetship system through a government agency, that got me back into rural areas as a contributor to a rural area. Like, I see all the benefits of it, but I didn't drop out. I studied, I got through, I got a decent mark. I've been working ever since. I went from school to uni to work. Like, I've been contributing back into the system ever since. So it's kind of like we always think about from our own perspective and our own mindset. And for me, I see it and I go like, I want everyone to have that opportunity, even if they do drop out. But you're right, at what cost? In regards to like the current government, in my side of it, I do deal a lot with like state government and federal government grants that get applied out the system, and they're definitely, and government agencies in New South Wales, the current government and the Liberal government both were in like a competing match pretty much on who was going to cut public service the most when they won in New South Wales. And they both kind of set around 15-20%. They're absolutely, and a Labor government almost never seems to cut. You expect them to grow public service. They're looking at it. They're going like it's a restructure we're in right now in health. We're in it. I know that they've increased the wages for people who are there, but they're restructuring and trying to find ways to cut. We're definitely seeing it in infrastructure and the cutting of all the grant programs and re-divvying them up. So you're right though. Like, they need time to make changes for you to see a benefit as a voter, and you'd never see it in the first 4 years. Absolutely. The main thing that gets my goat with it all is not about how they approach all that stuff. It's just that when they take whatever was done before them, because it was from a different party, and throw it all in the bin. Start from scratch. That's what blows my mind, because we're all the same public servants in all these different systems who are working to be as productive. Like, a majority of people, like, they're of course, your professional hide and seekers who spend a lot of time doing nothing. That's everywhere. But there's a lot of people who are really genuinely trying to keep this whole thing running and do it for good value for money. They get it. We're taxpayer funded, and the money that we're using is all our money. It needs to be value for money. But then you get like, new government, we're going to do the exact same grants, but we're going to rename them and use the same documents and everything else. We're going to call it something different, and we're going to change it because we're new and we're different, and we're going to cut the ribbon differently to the people before. And that's what kind of that change, you don't think it, but that change of a name on something or whatever.
Costly.
That's all the like purchase orders, the way that it's structured, the contracts, the letters, the way you draft the letters, all the administrative stuff that it takes to change the name of an organization from RTA to RMS to Transport. Like that stuff.
And what's it achieving?
And achieves nothing, but the Libs did all of that. while they were in
Stupid
as well. So they're
morons. Yeah.
they're all both as good as each other.
Oh God, yeah.
And so I'm definitely at the point now where I've been I've sat on the fence for a long time with political my political sides of things, and I don't think that either are any better. They're just all driven by the same thing. Like, my way is better than the other person's way, and that kind of pig-headedness is a killer for productivity. Absolutely.
Yeah, I
It's
think
a
that's the
killer.
biggest problem with it. As I said, I'm not either. I couldn't. I just look at it and see what's going on. But I just look at the cost of living at the moment and just shake my head.
Yeah, it's getting pretty nasty.
The worst ones are the promises. I look at. I got three, obviously, with the three young ones in daycare, and getting promised that daycare costs are going to go down. Jesus Christ, I'm paying $680 a week out of pocket. That hasn't gone down. If anything, I got the pay rise being a teacher, and because of the pay rise, then my childcare went up $95 a week. So that was completely pointless. So I really appreciate that. And you just sit there and just go, this is, unfortunately they just do dumb things, waste money. And as you said, they both are as bad as each other. That's the problem. And I don't think there's no real long-term decent decisions because they're so worried about the other person's going to be in when it pays off that they don't want them to look good. And it just hinders. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and being a visionary and someone like with political nous is extremely painful for a lot of people who it falls on the wrong side of. And, I was listening to a podcast the other day, a much bigger podcast from the US than yours. And they were talking about like Roosevelt and, how in today's terms, he'd probably be seen as like a radical greenie for locking off public land for conservation and recreational hunting, and would be seen as like, it's not for industry, it's not to be like completely utilized till it's dead. What is this guy like? But now everybody in all sides of politics would want to be compared to him as a president, yet if he was around today, they would absolutely be trying to shut him down from every single angle. So it's real tough to be that person. I don't know if they're in the political system. I don't know where they are. I don't know when they're coming. We hope, mate. Have you heard of this thing called Pareto's Law, where talks about, he looked into like this guy back in the 1800s or whatever in Italy, and he looked at the real estate system and he realized like, oh, there's like 20% of people own 80% of the real estate, and that seems to work because the other 80% don't really have the appetite for like ownership and mortgage and debt and everything. And so that kind of works. But then when it starts to sway more the other way, where 10% own 90%, it starts getting dangerous. 5% own 95%, it gets real, Well,
it's monopolies, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look
and
at
so
Coles and Woolies.
we're ticking up that list, and in regards to property ownership, in regards to wealth, in regards to so many things. And it's like, oh God, we're really like land ownership in Australia, like all those things kind of, we're playing into it. It's going to get pretty dangerous.
Well, that's where like what's going on down there in Vic at the moment with turning it's like state forests into national parks. I just think it's so ridiculous because it's impacting people that use them for what's the purpose and what's the benefit. Like, I'm all for preserving nature, and I think every hunter is a conservationist at heart to some extent, but not being able to get into the bush or be restricted to be able to use it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, that's the best way to make a resource valuable, is have a value on it. The meat eater guys talk about it all the time, is that if the land doesn't have a value, that people are going to spend money on it.
They don't care about it.
They don't care about it. And
it's national parks is hard, and New South Wales, it's really challenging. I do also not like the grip hold that, and the kind of the policy or the direction from our own counterparts in New South Wales, which is kind of like lock the humans out because they're destructive. But the problem with it is that they're right some of the time. Like that, it can be really like nasty, but that's when you get big amounts of people in smaller areas, you get lots of rubbish and mess and people misbehaving. But when you look at the scale of what we have in New South Wales as a resource for all people to use in different fashion, then if you can, regulate that and make sure it's kind of controlled to a degree, but not completely locked out, we've got huge potential to be the best in the world, like with the best opportunities. You know what? Like, I know the place I'd be going tomorrow if national parks were opened up to recreational hunting. I know the place I'd be going tomorrow. I know we all know where they are. Like, literally, a famous bow hunter was charged for being in this same place. There is some
accidentally, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Look, it's a big country up there, and not the first, and won't be the last. You know, there are huge herds of feral, wild, game animals in some of these national parks, and everyone knows Royal National Park and the rooster population is epic. Just imagine, but imagine that though. Like, you'd have Royal National Park, you'd have all of Sydney suddenly coming down on it. It's they're hard. You got to kind of have it. It needs to be bit by bit. But the world didn't come crashing down when the state forests opened up, did it? It's wildly successful. There are definitely cases, particularly of your old timers, will tell you about how good the private land that they used to be on next to the state forest was until they opened the state forest and all the Canberra people came in and all the Sydney people came in and started poaching it. And like, you hear all those stories, and maybe some of them are true, but a lot of it's probably just finally there's actually other people can access this stuff except for a minute few. And that pisses people off when they've had the perfect thing going. It does to all of us. We all get a little bit jealous like that. When you've got something that's good and then your game camera comes up with a photo of a pig dog or another bloke walking through a private land, and like that, it pisses you off to no end. But it's like, that's life, hey. Still heaps of deer out there, and they're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So.
Well, wow, I don't know about that. I'm nervous that the poison will get in, because that is the cheap, cost-effective option I will be pushed. It eventually will, I think.
If I could sit here right now with my creative mind and all the technologies I'm aware of, I can think of many other technologies that would be even more devastating. And you got to believe that there are other people thinking about these things too. It's not necessarily put down on paper yet. We all know, there's lots of tech that everyone's getting a piece of at the moment in regards to night vision and thermal and drone technology. Target, like, they can literally fly a forest now and identify every single animal that's in it by color, shape, whatever, like down to a fairly reasonable degree. New Zealand's already looking at individual dropping of 1080 for stoats and possums and the like. We got absolutely no chance except to just continue to advocate from our position as to the what, why, and the where. But you're right, it's bloody scary. It really is. I don't know if we'll ever get there. I don't know. It's hard. I don't stay up at night thinking about it. I just try to do the day to day and enjoy what I've got. But I definitely want my kids to be able to do it.
What you're saying about the advocacy is right. The numbers are the key, right? This is where it's got to be valuable economically, and it's got to be numbers for politicians to go, oh, there's a good group. I mean, look at Mark Latham when he jumped on board for trying to get hunters and promote, at the last New South Wales election. Mark's not a hunter. I don't think he has any interest in hunting, but he saw an untapped market there for people to jump on board for him, who supported Shooter Farmer Fisher, who had some divide and lost a couple of people who went independent. And all of a sudden he went, oh, here's a market of new people that could vote. Again, a politician just wanting to get reelected and get numbers so that they've got some power and some say and some sway. That's where we need to look at. Now, the problem with that, when we talk about national parks and getting into them, things like that, I don't think we have the numbers to ever have one of the big parties concerned about us. And that's the issue. We need to work out, there's got to be that fine line. The more people that hunt and shoot, the better for us. But the problem with that is then the amount of area, public land. People don't want to show spots. People don't want to share. People, want private access. I get it. I get all of that. But in the long run, that is also going to be that thing that sort of cruels hunting, I feel as well, because if we're not growing it and we're not having people hugely successful and they're going to blow in and out. And I know a lot of people go, well, if heart's not in it, it's not the thing for them. Well, that's great to say, but your heart's in it. And if we don't have numbers, eventually your heart can be in it, but it's not going to be much good, like bow hunting in SA. There's a lot of people that are pure, passionate, great people that bow hunt, What happened? Just not enough of them. That's the reality. The MP down there went, hey, we'll get rid of it. It looks great for the public, and this is going to occur. When you talk about the national parks and access, again, we talk about, you mentioned there that people doing the wrong thing, and think there is always going to be people that don't follow the rules. That's the reality of life.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why we have
That's why we have police force and
but here's the biggest problem. Nothing really, it's slap on the wrist crap. Now, I don't know if you saw, GMA just posted, and I love it. I think it's friggin' amazing, and shout out to them. Well bloody done, because they've just used DNA and they've caught a bloke who was poaching hog deer on Snake Island all the way back from 15 years ago, because they were able to DNA test this taxidermy, and they got him. Brilliant. Well done, guys. What happened to him? He had to forfeit his trophies, and he got a 12-month good behaviour bond, I think I read. Now, come on. This is the problem.
If you're caught in the act in New South Wales, it's like compoundment of your guns and car and fines and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Is it? Because I saw another article this year where the bloke got done up in the mid-north coast for shooting a pet deer, and him and his son, and it was their second time because they did it 5 years ago. So, I don't know. For me, this is what I feel the problem is we should be pushing our politicians to hammer people doing the wrong thing. Stop knee-jerk reacting to say, hey, we need to put a ban on this or a ban on this. And we're seeing it, with what happened in WA. We're seeing with issues in Queensland. Good people get punished because it's an easy blanket to appeal the mass public. Now, our issue here is the people are doing the wrong thing. The poachers out there, what happens to them? They get a slap on the wrist. They're back out there doing it again. They're not following the rules anyway, so they don't give a damn. Unless you make it that unattractive for someone to break the law, you're always going to have people doing it. And that's my biggest bugbear, is that the people doing the right thing are the ones that cop the brunt of it because of people doing the wrong thing. And we really seem to have people that just get slapped on the wrist for doing the wrong thing a lot of the time. And as I just said, the case in point, like, it was a signed, sealed, done deal. They've got this bloke for multiple hog deer, multiple, breaches. They went back through. He's never had a permit to hunt the area. Got him, signed, sealed, delivered, and a 12-month slap on the wrist, that a good behaviour bond. Like, come on. Like, at some stage, why is that scaring the next poacher doing the same thing?
Yeah,
how's that doing?
Short-term stuff is one of the, it's a tool. In the toolbox. What I want to focus on, like, I'm only 35, so I'm going to be around in this industry for a long time. I want to keep just writing and keep doing my thing. I'm trying my thought process, and I think, like, the Australian Deer Association is on the same line. That stuff's all well and good, and that's what governments do. They do those regulations, they write the rules and everything. But all of us, need to play the long game, and the long game is, who do we want to be in this way of life, this passion, this pursuit with us, picking the right people and putting our time into them, giving them the right values, giving them the right tools and the right reasons to be out there, like building this thing again from the ground up, because we've come in like from all directions, ad hoc chaos, and we need to kind of like redirect and go, right, like, what are we in it for? And the best model to look to, you see it in the US. We've got even better opportunity than they have over there, yet their values for it, their passion for it is so much stronger. And they have bigger penalties for poaching. They have it's huge for them, yet it still happens. So definitely, that still goes on. But their values from it, like, most people go on for their 1 or 2 deer a year, but they think about it all year. They plan for it. They prepare themselves for it. Like, they use every bit of it because they legislatively have to use every bit of the deer, like, get as much out of the mountains as you can or out of the bush. All this stuff, like building that from the ground up and playing the long game, is what I want to try and do. And that starts with, like, us coming through as the next generation. Like, my exposure to hunting before getting into it properly myself was a little bit of shooting guns out in, some, ex-girlfriend's place, shooting a shotty out of milk can or a milk bottle or whatever, things like that, or stories from my dad and my uncle who would go out, shooting cans and smashing cans, like, and stories of them. I wrote about one of them in an article about like my uncle getting a shotgun slug to the chest, and then him going, his mates having a conversation. They're only like 18. They drove out to like Dubbo or something, and them having a conversation about, oh, well, is he going to die? Should we just leave him here, or should we take him to hospital? Eventually deciding to take him to hospital, him checking himself out when my dad got there, and them hopping into his car and driving. Back then it was like 8 or 9 hours to get all the way back to Sydney, and driving all the way back to Sydney. And he had those things in his chest until he died, those lead pellets. Like, that's the stories I had coming up through it, of them being drunk with loaded guns, like all this kind of stuff. And, we talk about it like jokingly now, but it was obviously very serious at the time. And it was all before any of this other, stuff happened in Australia in regards to gun regulation and everything. But starting with that culture from now and through, taking the real good stuff, the real wisdom, the real age-old stuff from the old timers, but then bringing in our stuff as well. Like, why are we into it? Like, being confident to choose your own reason to get into this. Don't just do what others do because that's what you saw on Instagram. Like, if you don't like going out spotlighting for deer or bunnies or whatever and leaving them behind, or taking the backstraps only, you can go and do it and learn, and don't shut that person down for that being their approach. They're trying to run a farm or whatever. But then when you do it in your own time, have some rules on what you want to achieve. Like, I'm going to shoot a deer and I'm going to try and carry it out whole. And I'm going to process it at home, and I'm going to do a great job, and I'm going to eat the ribs, and I'm going to eat the heart, and I'm going to do all this stuff. That's the best thing I found about coming into it late, was like, I got to decide what I wanted to do and how I wanted to approach it. And when I go to property owners, I tell them, hey, I'm a backpack rifle hunter for food. So I literally go in, I try shoot only one shot if I'm lucky enough to get onto a deer, and I take the thing with me, minus some of the guts, Yeah. And like, and I want to kind of like, I'm trying to build that. I want to build it with my kids, build it, the people around me, blokes in town that, they all know hunters, they all know guys that do it around. They've maybe done a little bit of it themselves, and they want to get into my way just because of how I've explained it, and they've seen it, and they've seen me doing the work. They've come and helped me butcher an animal. I've given them some meat. They've gone, holy shit, this is amazing. And just start from now and go, right, like, you're going to care about it now, yeah? So when that vote comes up and I message you to say, write an email to the MP, we need to get something happening with this. We've got another person, and we get another one, and we get another one. We got to just build it again. And I think consolidating to a couple of those agencies that are presenting the right message. I absolutely have consolidated on ADA. I'm in with them 100%. I'll probably be a member forever. They just seem to have that there's that attitude, that mindset of like, we got to go straight to the core, straight to the heart of it, at the state level at least, in Victoria, and try and build it from the ground up and focus on the values, exercise, mental health, having fun, being outdoors, good food, good times. Like it's and there's these other people that I'm also on board with. That they've got it. They got the right idea with it. They're like, it's your path, it's your journey. Like, stick to it. Make decisions for yourself and go for it. Learn from people, but pick your own path with it, and don't just kind of bow out because you think it's the way it was 50 years ago and you don't like it. And it's the same with people who think they're antis with it. Like, I've turned that many people into my way of thinking, and they are okay with me doing it. Like, it's been a long time since I've had a friend or a family member or someone write to me frustrated about me posting, hunting stuff, because they now get it. They get that I'm in it for the right reason, according to them, and my right reason. And I'm not going to stop. And they kind of get that too. They're like, he's in it for life. This guy, he's keen. He's posting, he's eating this stuff 4 or 5, as many times a week as he can. He obviously loves it. So that's I guess, we somehow got around to that, and I'm as prone to a rant as anybody, but that's my thinking with it. Like, the regulatory stuff and the punishments are all one thing, and rightly so. Well, you've got to hit people when they're misbehaving and use that. Like, the stick needs to be used, but you've also got to give them opportunity. You've also got to teach at least their kids, if they're not teaching them, give them another path to a different way to do it, not to see them out of it forever because of the stories their dads and mums told them about bad hunting experiences. And that's where these people that I've mentioned consistently, like Meat Eater, Prof D, 88, they're doing that stuff. They're doing it, whether they're doing it subtly or not, they're showing that way of life and a path that can be taken where, like Prof D, like he literally makes financial, like career decisions from what I can tell to make sure that he can follow his passions. So he's purposely choosing a life that is around his hunting passion, not the other way around. Some of us, we're career first, passion second. And that's just awesome to see. And I want to keep seeing that. And there are heaps of folks out there. The last time I did a podcast a few years ago, a lot of them reached out. That's exactly what they said, is like, thanks for helping us who want to get into it for the first time to think about it more and to give us some like drive for, not feeling like we're kind of we don't belong. And saying all that though, like I'm drafting a funny, it's funny from my perspective. I have fun writing some of these articles, and I'm trying to write one at the moment a bit around like, so you want to get into hunting, like here's all the things you got to think about and do, as like a guise to being like an advice article, but actually just kind of along the lines of you need a huge budget. Like you need to buy all this stuff that you're not going to use so that you can sell it to us when you're done, so we can buy it secondhand on Facebook Marketplace. You need to get like a Land Cruiser. You need to fit it out with drawers and, rooftop campers. Like you'll need $100,000 for that, and you'll need this, that, and that. Like just going through this list of all these things. So I don't know. This whole way of life's the best, man. Like all of that stuff. It annoys me. I think about it sometimes, but then I just go back and go, would I be doing anything else though? If they cancel it, if it gets done, I'll probably move. Where else would I don't know where I'd go, but I'd go somewhere. I'd probably go to New Zealand if they're still good. Worst case, I don't know, go to Canada. Just go elsewhere so I can pursue it. Choose my own path.
It's one you can't sort of get hung up and lose sleep over it, but you've got to be mindful of it. It's like anything in life. You've got to have that balance. And I think a lot of hunters out there probably don't even think about this or don't even care. And I said that a lot. I see a lot of people that are like, politics isn't my thing. And that's great. Or you said before, never talk about politics and religion. And I sort of completely disagree with that, in the sense that everyone's got an opinion and you should be heard. And if you
I just say it because everyone says it, but I talk about it all the time.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, I read something about it the other day saying if you have that approach and you don't even talk about it, you not voicing your opinions, what do you stand for? And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, because why is it such a subject that people shy away from or are scared because we might have different viewpoints?
I think some people, like, I don't know, like you run into people, there are people that are they're just doers. They exist. I think a part of why Australia has been so successful in a way is that there are a lot of people that they're kind of the quiet achievers, the doers, they don't service too much of an opinion until the time they have to vote, and then they keep it internal. And I think it helps to not build too much of a culture, like a negative culture where every tiny little voice is important. That's what I think. I mean, I don't do that myself. Like I write to politicians. I do, you know what I mean? I voice my opinions. I'm talking on a podcast right now. But I think there's just a lot of these people that are just, whether they just don't think that their opinion's even important or even matters or even anyone cares or wants to hear it, or whether they just go like, who am I? Like I'm just this tiny little cog in a giant wheel. As long as I pay my taxes, be a good person, you know what I mean? Like you don't need to, you don't necessarily need to be part of the church to have good morals. It's that same sort of thing. You don't need to be vocal about what you think is right to be a good person or to be right in that and to follow that lifestyle. I do kind of like, monkish almost. Like there are some people in the country, and I think it's why we can be successful, is that they don't need to express their views and opinions all the time. They just do. They just do what they do. And that's kind of cool as well. But in saying all of that, like, it also can be off-putting. Like, you got guys, you're having a conversation, they just never give you anything. And you're just giving it all away, and you're just like, man, this person's got a full read on me now because, like, they know everything. They know the way I think about everything. And I've just told them, this, that, and the other, and how I hunt and how I do this and all that. They could be an anti for all I know. What have I just done? They could target, target me in my profession or something. Like, I don't really think too much like that. But when I first got into hunting, I used to think about that. I used to be guarded because of it when I'm not a guarded person. And there are a lot of guarded people that maybe they are that way for that reason. There's that many more hunters out there that do this. Like when I talk to people and they do it, and they don't have Instagrams, they don't have Facebook, they don't go on podcasts, they don't do anything. That no one knows. They just are hunters. You know what I mean? And I don't know how you get them and how you get them on board. Or is it good that they're just secretly there so that when the next thing comes along, they're ready to become a number? I don't know what's better. I think it's probably better to have more vocal people for sure, and bigger numbers. But yeah, how do you get them? They're just that's just the way that they are, and at least they're on our side. I don't know, a little bit of help, I guess, when we need it.
Yeah, it's just that. Look, each their own. If people don't want to be involved in that and they don't want to be vocal, I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. It's, I'm always about, as long as it's legal, you do you, right? Whatever makes you happy. If you want to go out there, I know some great blokes that are super experienced hunters, probably the most experienced I've ever met, and they're super quiet. No, they don't talk to anybody. They don't have Instagram. They don't post. That's just not who they are. They don't care about any of that. And then I know quite the opposite, that are just in it for money and fame. And, that's...
Yeah, I thought I was going to be one of those of the first you mentioned, and so I dropped out of the socials for a little while there, and still, wrote some articles here and there, had another kid, did all those kind of life things, and thought, I don't really, it's just, I don't need this. I just am this. I don't need to. I can share it with my friends and stuff. And what I'd say to someone who's like that is, I guess to be fully immersed in something like this is one of the, to shy away from this part of it means you're missing out a little bit, and on on parts of it that are important, or other people that are similar, potentially, friendships that exist or could exist if you were part of it. So you got to kind of take from it what you want to take from it. Don't let it dictate what you take from it. So I got back into the socials thinking I'm confident enough to just do what I do on it, and whatever, we'll just see what happens. And I just, sharing it is the most important thing for me. Letting people know that this stuff's good, venison's good, wild game's good, fishing's great, and you can actually take a little charge of your own food and your own recreation. You can take charge of that stuff and do some pretty cool stuff that a lot of people wouldn't even think about, me included. 7 or 8 years ago, I didn't even know deer existed in Australia, God forbid. I was walking in a national park, the one that I mentioned before, and I literally turned a corner and there was a buck looking at me 15 meters away. And it's what are you doing? If you don't know what a deer is and that they don't exist, of course I knew what deer were, but if you didn't know that they existed right where you were, and you saw, a rubbed back buck just before the rut it was, you shit yourself. I didn't know whether to run away or get my camera out and take a photo or chase it down or what. Not that they give you any time to make those decisions. They peer into your soul, and they in that split second uncover all of your inadequacies as a person, as a hunter. If you've ever seen that, when a deer is looking right at you, when you've made that one step and stepped on that twig, and God, they pull everything out of you, all emotions, and then they turn and disappear in seconds, if not without barely even a noise. If they don't bark or whatever, they'll just turn, jump a fence and skip away. It's amazing what they can do. I weigh about the same as a male, fallow buck, and look, the only time you'll see me disappear that quickly and seamlessly is if I get a little whiff of, the little man's laying bricks. He's put a few brown trout in the lake, and see you later. I don't even bark. I just turn and go like a sandbar. I just slink away. It's that's kind of how I started with it. And isn't it funny though? There's all these people out there that I think also, if they were exposed to it and then suddenly got on like me and started Googling and went absolutely deer crazy, I watched every video I could find. I read every book. I did everything, cookbooks, everything, all in a short period of time. That if I'm out there, so's another 50,000 around the corner, 100,000 up there. they exist, man. Like whether we, do we want them in or not, whether they're the right people or not, whether they're the ones who want to be rich and famous, whether they're, the ones who just want to do it because that's what they want to do. They exist, and we need to keep, I don't know, do we need to keep bringing them in? If we bring them in, we need to bring the right ones in, and we need to make sure that they've got the right values when they start. And so anybody who's got that attitude, I'm on board with. And there's definitely a few of them out there that are seeming to have a pretty good crack at that, that side of it, and kind of give them that good tuition into it. Yeah.
Yeah, look, and that's the thing. I think you're right. Like talking about education, and I think you've got to have the mix. You've got to have the punitive side that to really come down on the people doing the wrong thing, and then the education side at the start to make sure that everybody knows what the wrong thing is. And there's one thing I look at and go, there's no, like, it shocks me in the hunting world that we have very little. It doesn't seem that we have governing bodies as much. So, like, for example, if you want to do hunting education courses, anyone can do them. Like, there's no qualification, there's no accreditation, there's no hell. I know a bloke that runs it who has got himself kicked off properties for poaching and shot off, other over the fence on the wrong side to take bucks for his trophy room. So I look at that and go, that's not the person that we should be having run hunting education courses, in my opinion. But there's nothing there. There's no governing bodies for same as being a hunting guide. Anyone can be a hunting guide. There's no, you've got to have experience. You've got this. I mean, I've been on with a hunting guide who doesn't know how to dial in a scope.
It's amazing you said it, because I was literally thinking the other day, like just driving along, that's when I do most of my thinking about what I'm going to like write about one time, and I often, like, so much so you got to pull over the side of the road and make notes in your phone because it just comes to you. And you're like, and I just went, like, as I was driving on this drive, I was like, I got half an hour, like, I'm going to write bullet points of all the things that, like, how easy is it to be creative and think of all ways in which we can improve and enhance what we do. And one of them was exactly along that side of it. Why is there not a TAFE course in firearms and firearm training? Why is there not a TAFE course in being a hunting guide, in butchering? I mean, obviously there is in being an actual butcher and all that sort of stuff. But, like, I was just thinking, like, how amazing these things. Imagine doing a guide program for, like, I don't know, let's say there's young lads living in a rural area who have no real prospect, but they love kicking around in the bush and doing that kind of stuff, and they know it like the back of their hand. Then suddenly they've got this opportunity to go to do a TAFE course to be a guide and to take out people into national park.
Yeah.
Whether people like it or not, there's probably an avenue where these sorts of things are possible. And this is one of the things that I also was brainstorming about, like playing along with the motion of the government agencies and playing into that motion to get our voice in there. And one of the big things national parks, whether you know it or not, are looking into is actually joint management of national parks through Aboriginal land councils.
Yes.
Would they not automatically be
on
the side of
jobs,
people
positions
who want to? Are they not on the side of people who want to respectfully utilize the resources of the land and not be locked out from it?
Yep.
I would say so. I think they'd probably feel a bit like, at the moment, probably feel a little bit on the, stuff everybody else. Like, we've got, joint management now. We could have it all to ourselves. That's our mindset. Like, it's the mindset of the government agencies who currently have it shut off to these recreational activities. I wonder how they're going to take it if that's what the approach ends up being. We're going to allow it, but you have to hire one of our guides.
I think they did that in Alaska. I think Alaska has it that they've got a really good system that you must have
muskox or whatever.
For hunting certain species. Don't quote me on it, but if you have to hunt certain species, you have to have
I mention it, I think in my own head there'll be people out there. It's all or nothing. You got to like, if we're going to get access to it, it's our land, it's public land, blah blah. And they'll be like, we should just be able to go and do it. And they're probably the same people that poach, because it's a mindset they have. Like, it's it's there. I'm not killing anything that anyone cares about anyway. They're just shooting from helicopters anyway. There's a lot of reasons why you can convince yourself to do illegal things. That's how people convince themselves to steal, to speed, to use the phone everything while driving. Exactly. So I listed like 100 things or something. I was like, I'm never going to get anywhere if I stop and write all these things down. And that was just one of them. And just imagine it. I would, and again, I know exactly where I'd go. I don't know who I'd call, but I know exactly which national park I'd go into. And I'd be like, all right, I'm going, and here's my big chest freeze, and I'm ready to go. I want a goat, I want a pig, I want a red deer, I want a fallow deer, and they're all there. And anything else I can opportunistically get while I'm in it. And I'm going to spend 3 days up there, and it's going to be a haul, and I'm going to learn heaps, and I'm going to have a cracking time because the resource is there, and the person with the skills and the knowledge is there, and the access is there, and I'm never going to poach because I've got those things, and I got it out of my system. I got what I wanted. I got food to eat. I got this experience. It's right here. Like, we could just grab it tomorrow and it wouldn't be that hard to get it set up. And that's why I'm still super hopeful that we can go the other way, but it's being played so poorly. Like, I think this is an opportunity and something to think about. I've been already mentioned it to the ADA and kind of put them onto you guys need to be thinking about this and reaching out, particularly in New South Wales, and start kind of getting into like some partnerships or start to really chat to some of these land councils or potentially going to be in joint management to mutually discuss what's possible. And the hunter education part of it, here's the irony of it. Like, we're talking about, potentially doing hunter education for firsts peoples of the country, but it's needed because it's all forgotten. It's all been pushed away. It's gone. Like, it needs to be done again. I play AFL with guys. I mentioned to them that I hunt. They're keen, but they all have stories of how they've been out trapping rabbits or ferreting or whatever once or twice, but they've never done it, and there's no opportunity to do it. And they certainly don't have a firearm, and they don't their understanding of it is very limited.
Yeah.
If we got it, it's such a long road, but it could start tomorrow if the right people are asking the right questions and putting the right case forward as to why. And no one can say no against it. That's the biggest strength of it, is that the same people that are a lot of the times there's sentiments that are anti-hunting and anti-anything like that, any of those extractive industries, are also pro-rights of certain, society. And when you put something forward that actually crosses those boundaries, how many people are going to jump that fence and be on board with it because it's for what they believe is the right reason? And that kind of then grays it again. Instead of us going like, we're going this way and we're all about this, they're going that way, they're all about that. Suddenly we've mixed the two together again, and they go, oh shit, now I have to use my brain and think whether I'm actually into people going into national parks, taking out animals that were introduced and potentially and need to be managed, and using them for food and getting, good exercise and getting, mental stimulation and skills and experience, and not just being a drop kick who does nothing, but actually being like a functioning member of a community who shares that stuff around. God forbid someone could be against that.
Yeah.
I don't want to know them. Stuff them.
It doesn't make sense at all. And that it does really shock me that we're hesitant about some of these things too. Like, I have no problem with accreditation or education or training. And there was talk about people having to do far more to get their firearms license, in the sense of like practical and things like that. And I'd love to see it to go to a TAFE course, to be honest, or something along those lines, because it then ticks a box.
I don't mind it. I wish I did more. Like, I had to do a lot of self-education, and I'm still not very good with it. So
further to that, we've got the other side of it. And I was talking to a person who's quite in with the Shooters Union and whatnot about this, and their perspective was, we don't want that to go because then it puts people out, if they have to go to a range and they're not there, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, yeah, okay, you're looking at it from that perspective. But what about the opposite perspective, that if it is an actual formal qualification, this term that everyone keeps throwing around about professional shooter versus recreational shooter, that starts to get wiped away. And all of a sudden those lines are now blurred. So there's one less thing that our antis or opposition can actually bring up to you. That has to be a positive in my sense. I appreciate what you're saying. And then maybe we need to put steps in place to address those needs.
That's why I love the waterfowl identification test. To me, it's the best thing.
Yeah,
you have to put in some effort. You have to learn what these birds are and what ones you're not meant to shoot, and you have to learn what they sound like, what they look like, how to identify them on the wing. And that, like doing that study for it and that course, it reminded me of going for my license, my L's or whatever, doing my L's test. It reminded me of that. And you can sit the test beforehand, you can practice. like in the grey matter you get from that, like I was so pumped to figure all that out, and it's still like you got to keep relearning it as you go. Like before I go out rice field or whatever, I'll just kind of do a quick little like double check of like, okay, that one's white wing triangle shape, like that one sounds like that a bit more, because there are a couple more species out there that I don't see often around here. But that's the best thing ever, because straight away I go like, my first argument would be like, well, which species can you identify? What do you know about these things you're trying to protect? Like, if you're so into ducks that aren't, that are eating up rice paddocks and smashing all this agriculture, if you're so into that, why don't you know anything about it? Why don't you learn about it? If you learn about it, you'll understand it more, and you'll understand that the numbers are massive. We have contributed to a industry and agriculture that has buffeted animal populations. I mean, kangaroos, introduced ones like deer, rabbits, all that sort of stuff, the native ducks, like all that stuff has benefited in certain areas in condensed amounts that need to be managed. We've created the problem. We also need to create the solution for it. And that is not to ignore it and put our heads in the sand. And that's why I love things like the waterfowl test. I wish there was something else I personally, I do kind of wish there was still like a R license requirement for deer, and not a season, but like at least everyone has to sit the same test and understand where the vitals are, and understand, some of the, like what time of year they breed, what time of year they're in fawn. Like I do still wish that sort of stuff was instead of just open season, do what you want with it, except through when it's required for the agricultural side of things. I think that would be great. If you're doing it recreationally, you have to do that. And then you had to record the numbers you get. Wouldn't that be great? Because then we'd have numbers of deer, and we'd have even more ammo, for why we're an important part of this whole puzzle piece, yeah, it's it's a fun thing. I mean, we're all sitting here, we think about it so much because we're in it so much. Our whole life is built around it. But you're right, like most people aren't thinking about it on a daily basis, and we just have to kind of formulate our opinions and have them succinct and ready to go, so we can constantly fight the good fight and constantly put these cases to people where it matters, when it matters. And you may not think it matters, but I think every little conversation plays onto the next one and plays onto the next one. And the reason I think that is because getting hunting access, it's the same thing. Conversation after conversation, you are shut down 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times, on approaching this stuff. But every now and again, there's that one little one that leads to a phone number, that leads to a person, that leads to an access. And God, it's good when you get it. And
I wouldn't know. I'll tell you when
honestly, you got to keep going, persist. Troy Skeen, Honker Hunters, he's got his attitude to it is the best. He's like, what do you have to offer? Like, what are you gonna put in, for that access? You got to go try to meet them face to face, try shake the hand, obviously be humble, be ready to be shut down, and don't obviously sook about it. You can be perceptibly upset because you want to do this thing, bring something. He usually leaves them something. Obviously, if he gets access and they want food, he will obviously provide them with it, or he'll take a chocolate bar, a few beers, whatever, like something, have something to offer. And yeah, just be genuine about what you're in it for. Have that good conversation. I tend to do that, door knock where I have the time. That's always hard. Talk to heaps of people, drop letters. I'd like to. I personally, if I was a property owner and I received a nicely crafted letter with the person's where they live, approximately, like what they do, they got a family, what they're in it for, and a contact, I'd be pretty open to chatting to that person. And I've definitely had people reach out who have no intention of giving me access, but just wanting to say, thanks for your letter. It's good to know that you're out there and you're approaching this thing the right way. But I've got this property and it's for me and my family and my friends. So thanks, but no thanks. It's like, that's cool. That's good. I'm glad, now I know, one thing I 100% know is that property or the properties next to it, they've got deer. They got animals to hunt. So I've learned something still from it. Plus, I got to go to a pretty nice spot. I'm driving around and I'm, seeing all these cool places, meeting nice people sometimes. Yeah, it's very hard from certain parts of, when you're down here and you're in this place, you have leverage of your location. You have leverage, just like, that I told you about that article about getting into hunting and how to best get into it. One of the kind of jokes I'm playing with on that as well is like, well, the best way to get into it is to be born onto a big property that's got game animals on it and have it to yourself. The second best thing is to live next to somebody or be mates with somebody and be from a rural area. But unfortunately, that's only a very small % of the Australian population. So if you don't have those things, just have heaps of money so you can buy a hunting property. And if you don't have that, have heaps of money so you can pay someone to lease the property. And if you don't have that, like, in going down the list, and then if you end up having to just do public land hunting, make sure you that's the highest on the pedestal. Make sure you let everybody know that you're a public land hunter. God forbid that you don't have any private access, but they don't know that. You do it because you're passionate about it and you want to do it the hard way and you want to do it the real way. Like, you're not like these, easy, lazy private property people. You're in it for the right reasons. Like, you're standing by public land. It's a right. It's a necessity, So just, I don't know. Just, I got so early days. I got the anxiety of not getting onto deer and the anxiety of messing up stalks, anxiety of not getting private property and spending all this time in public land and not getting anything. It racked me. Like, it really hurt to have all of that until I realized, and one or two successes on deer helps, till I realized, like, just be in it for the pursuit, for the fun, for the enjoyment, for the people you meet, for the good times, because this is a little known secret to the rest of the Australians. I know that we talked about, maybe lack of numbers can be dangerous for hunting in the long term, but there's a lot of people that don't know how cool this shit is, man. Like, they don't know, they don't get it, they don't understand it because they've never done it. Just, it's hard to explain walking within 50 meters of a wild animal that is highly trained to get away from you. That is way better sight, way better hearing, way better smell than you, but we're smarter. And there's nothing like being successful against all those odds, like being that predator and doing that work and then getting the reward at the end of it. It is the best thing in the entire world. There's nothing better.
No, I'd agree with that. I think it is very, very much. Look, for me, it just ties in a lot of loves of just being out in the bush, camping, hiking, add the hunting in, it just sums up so many pursuits or passions into one thing. And that's what, it's awesome. I absolutely love it for that sense.
And sometimes part of that is and getting away and doing this thing that's special that not many people do. Like I do, that's kind of, I guess, the point I was making. Like, I really appreciate that sometimes every path you tread on a hunt, no one has done that same path. And even you won't ever walk that same path again. Like, you're literally going off the track. You're not just hiking. You're not trekking. You're not going from A to B. You're not camping. You're not doing any of those things. Mountain biking. You're going to parts of these farms and stuff that, like, I was on a property up in the Upper Hunter area, massive swathe of land, like huge. I was going up into parts of that property that no one had walked on, including the person who owned it. He drives a fence line. He has, no one set foot up there for decades. That's
cool.
That's so cool. Like, and there'll be parts of the state forest. I know that there's a lot of people that hunt them, but there are parts of the state forest that people are walking through that someone hasn't walked through in 5 years.
Yeah.
And where do you get that? Like, you get that in Australia, you get that in this country, and you get that being a hunter, because you don't want to walk. You walk on a game trail. Sometimes you also see deer on roads and paths because they're cleared and they're easy. They're like little highways, but generally you're trying to push through their habitat to their feeding areas, to their bush, to their safe zones. And that is usually off the beaten track. And it's another reason why it's a tick. There's another tick in the box of why we do it and why it's so cool, and why you kind of both wish more people would do so that we could do it forever, but also wish people weren't doing it. That's the biggest, one of the paradoxes of this whole thing. Hey, another paradox is like being in love with like deer so much, but yet pursuing to kill them. I've never quite figured that one out in my head. Like, why my immediate thought when I saw a deer was like, I really want to chase that thing, and like I really want to get that thing.
I think it's because they're delicious.
But I didn't know any. I didn't know that there was hunting, and like I didn't know much about it all. Like I was honestly completely virgin to it, and the first instinct was like Google deer Australia hunting. Like that tells you something. There's something godly. There's something above just like doing it for all these other reasons. We're meant to do it.
It's interesting you said that. So, because you've come on as a adult
Yeah.
onset hunter, and then you can see you're passionate about it, obviously, or hear you're passionate about it, I should say, because we are a podcast medium.
Yeah.
But
you get the luxury of both seeing and hearing,
I do, yeah.
Hearing the passion oozing out in my pajamas. Yeah.
But you've gone a step further. You write as well, and so where can people find some of what you have published?
Best way, particularly to go back through the catalogues, when you sign up, if you sign up to Australian Deer Association, so it's like I think it's about $100 a year. You get the usual stuff, like you can use it for your recreational club side of getting your R license in New South Wales and things like that. You get subscription to the magazine, including the digital platform. So they have an app which has all the previous, don't know how far back it goes, but a lot of the previous, far back enough that it covers all the stuff I've done. Previous magazines, which are now, I believe they were released like bi-monthly. I think they're going to quarterly now. So focusing on like, high quality, but less regular. They're not doing updates on it as much as just stories and bigger sort of things in the picture side of it, and doing their updates through other forms. So that's one way. I do usually get a snippet of it from them when I've done one, and I kind of, just, I don't know, very crappily get like, whether I get a screenshot of my own articles or a PDF or whatever I do, and I post them on Instagram, on my story on Instagram. So I'd have close to a dozen of them put through now, I think. Yeah, I think about that. And the one that's about to come out, it's any day now, I think, that's been posted. Usually it's like the first Monday of the month that they're going to come out. So I reckon come Monday, in my opinion, the funniest one that I've done is coming out, the best one. And so, to go through a very quick summary of what the mindset of it, I read Endure, like Cam Haynes's book, and I kind of, all this effort he goes into in all this ultra marathon, all this training and everything just to be a better hunter. And that kind of mindset is like, well, I'm not him, and I don't have, 20 years to go and train to be as good as him. So, I can be my best self. But, surely, what if there was a training program of like, what if the mindset was, if I be more like a buck, then I'll be in the mindset of a buck, so I'll be better at going after a buck. So what would that actually entail? Like, to be more like the thing that you're going to pursue in the rut. So then I kind of went through, well, it's, it's now autumn and I've got winter. So what am I going to do in winter? I'm going to get my condition back on. Got to start feeding up, do little to nothing at all. Leave the does and the fawns, like leave the does to do all the gestation, to do all the hard work to raise the fawns. I don't want to be involved in it, so I've got to move out of home, away from family. I've got to move into a share flat with a bunch of other lads. I've got to build a pecking order with them, a little bit of kind of vocalization, a little bit of physicality, but nothing too serious. We're all just hanging out, bachelor mob, like a 9-month-long bachelor party kind of thing. I've got to put on good condition. I've got to put myself into osteoporosis, of course, because that's what they do when they build their weapons. They go into a temporary osteoporosis. They siphon nutrients from their bones to build their antlers every year. So I've got to do that too. So I've got to stop eating, dairy, and I've got to get onto their diet. I mean, the best part, I've got to get onto a deer's diet. So I've got to forage. I've got to get nuts and berries and roughage and fiber. I've got to, drop dairy, drop meat. But then I started getting really moody, and I started getting really tired and falling lack of energy. Then I started picketing at, animal conferences like the meat co's and stuff. I started throwing red paint on people at steak restaurants. I started putting, stop stickers, stop eating meat stickers on the stop signs. Like I inadvertently became a vegan when I went onto a deer's diet. And so in the pursuit of trying to kill a buck, I've inadvertently become a vegan. So that's kind of, I go into like this kind of real kind of, and obviously I had to abstain from intercourse. I mean, they don't do it. Like it's April and May, that's it, or March, April, early May, that's it, and then the rest of the year they're celibate. So if it's good enough for a buck, mate, it's got to be good enough for me. If I'm going to get a buck, I need to be a buck. And so that's kind of the one that's the one I put out. It's a bit of a long one. They're the ideas I toy with, and I try to keep it kind of fun. And I didn't actually obviously do that. It's all hypothetical, but if I did do it, these are the things I'd have to do, and these are the consequences. So that one should come out on Monday, and I'll pretty quickly grab that one and probably post it on my story as well on Instagram. So look out for that, and let me know if it's actually funny or not. Like, you don't know. Like, I had heaps of fun writing. I read it sometimes. I still laugh at my own jokes. It's bloody, you got to be a psychopath to want to write, honestly. Probably the same as taking up a podcast, I guess, or having an Instagram. You got to kind of have something that you're into about yourself, and that, like, writing and trying to be like funny and interesting and creative. Yeah, it's just something that I got into, and something that I feel like we're missing a little bit, particularly in Australia. We don't have a lot of hunting books. The Kiwis love their hunting stories, and I've read all of them already. All the deer colors, all that kind of, like, they love their pig hunting stories, and the Americans love it too, but theirs are always really serious. Whereas the Kiwis are kind of funny. They've always got a punchline at the end of every chapter. So I kind of really want to pursue it to the point where I can put something like that together for all you readers out there. Maybe even get someone to voice it. So one day I've got to build up enough up my sleeve that I can get the Venison Diplomat book out, and so watch out for that.
There you go.
Give it another few years of articles, and I might have enough to do it, and hopefully you punters will buy it.
Well, before we go, you were talking about bush poetry before, and I'm not familiar with what it is or the differences. So do you want to give us a bit of an explanation?
Like, like Waltzing Matilda it's a bush poem.
Yeah.
And okay. It got kind of it got
commercialized
music. Yeah, like a music put behind it to that sort of famous tune. Dun, 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 dun. But there's lots of other ones that are quite famous ones that were written, and famous people to write them. Henry Lawson, Banjo Patterson, all those guys. But then what I didn't realize, and this was until I moved to Scone, that it's still going. Like, there's all these people out there writing originals, and they were funny. And these were like people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and I couldn't believe how funny they are. They're writing about getting a prostate exam. They're writing about going caravanning with the wife. They're writing about paddling across Sydney Harbour in a canoe and stuff they'd done, in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And I was like, wait, so anyone can do it? Like, it's not something that was done 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Like, it's still happening now. And that's kind of what got me into it. And, I told a story before we started with bush poetry about, finally writing my first one, which is an argument with my wife about who was stealing the bed sheets at night. And she kind of goaded me into writing one. I've done a few others since, but the one that, because I did tell you I'd be more than happy to share one. And the one that I have was kind of based on a successful buck hunt that I had when I lived up in Scone. And it was during the fallow deer rut, so autumn. And I just knew, I just had a feeling there was weather coming. It was during the drought. The drought was going to break. I had to get in there. I had some apprehension with hunting. I don't know why at that point, hunting trophy animals. And I had this little bit of a thing going on, like another one of those self-defined rules that I'm in it for food and I'm not in it for, just trophies and all this, just bullshitting myself. Like, everyone wants all parts of it. If you're really into hunting, you want to do all bits of it. You want to experience it all. So I went and went after a buck with the sole purpose of getting one. So the bush poem is called Buck Fever. I just got to put on my best Aussie accent first. That's what you do for these things. All right. Deep gullies cling to the cold morning air. A heavy fog holds with a soft white glare. A warm orange glow to disrupt the dark as my eyes they adjust as I find my path. Up I climb over creek and past tree in search of my prey so wild and free. Every step is careful, each boot well placed, and with the slightest noise I bring glass to my face. The creek weaves past in an apparent rush as I quietly sneak around a blackberry brush. A sudden movement and the air fills with fear, just a flick of a tail and the twitch of an ear. My body freezes before my mind can catch up. There he was sleeping, but now he's abrupt. The creature jumps up with a nasty bark. Brr! I shoulder my rifle, eyes searching the mark. But my delay is outdone by his explosive pace. The buck turns to flee while I'm just stuck in my place. My heart, it races and it pounds in my chest. The deer he has won, he has passed the test. He desires above all to live to old age, and it's a predator's wit that will be the gauge. All senses are needed, sight, smell, sound and mind, and a willingness to never give in to the grind. So I persist through the tussock and launch deeper still into their home near the tree-lined hill. The retreating buck has triggered an almighty croak. From a more dominant male, his defiance is awoke. His roar penetrates my chest, so loud and so clear. He is the king of this hill, that almighty deer. And he surely knows this as he continues to boast, putting up a challenge to any bloke to take on his post. So do I have what it takes? Can I see it through? With a little grit and determination, I know what to do. I'll meet his request with a burp and a snort. I cough and I splutter as my lungs distort, and before I can think or gather my breath, my plan it has worked. He responds from the depths. Atop the hill he stands, so proud and so tall, and me stuck at the bottom, so wowed and so small. And the distance between me and him, it just seems impossible to pass, and it quite possibly is, but for man's deadly device. So I take my time and I give in to muscle memory. My bipod is down, around chambered and ready, and I settle into the grass as I patiently hope for the angered buck to reappear in my scope. So I focus my breath and I loosen my grip, a symbiotic connection through fingertip. He comes in, charging into sight out from my left, so I quickly adjust my position and I just slow my breath. A quick little meow, and he stops in his tracks. I squeeze on the trigger, and the rifle attacks. His unfaltering confidence quickly turns into shock. What was his is now mine with a single shot. He stumbles and he trips and he thrashes about, but for a short time only as life's blood gushes out. I'm instantly overcome by the hunter's paradox, to feel so elated yet remorse for the loss. I want to feel happy, but the sadness, it won't leave me. Whoever said taking a life should be easy? All this power and destruction wrought through these hands, a seemingly simple act, but with great demand. Because although it may not seem it, the easy part is done, and out comes the knife, the hard work has begun. In pursuit of this flighty feral, we must consider its worth. It's destined to waste by so many, but I treasure them first. I'm in love with deer, from their fur through to their antler, and I value every meal alongside with the campfire banter. I often wonder what it is that drew me into this life before I knew deer existed or even cared for their plight. I guess each of us hunters have a where and a why, and many reasons why other hobbies will pass us by. But for no other mammal do I dedicate such a passion. I commit my spare time and I freeze on my rations. I guess chasing these animals isn't for every punter. For the rest of my life, I am a deer hunter.
I love it. What a way to a different way to end the podcast, but mate, I loved it. Well done. It's very resonating. It was a lot of those words.
It probably touched on a lot of the stuff we talked about.
It did. I think almost summarises the podcast.
That one's that's for you, SA government, in your aerial colours. Destined to waste. We do it too. I mean, we do plenty of it here too. Sight unsound. It's just there. It's different, I guess. It's so much private work, but no, it's something. That one came real quickly, and that's what's really amazing about it. Like when. I did the work by just being the person I was before I wrote the poem, and then it just kind of was natural. It all just fell together. It just made sense. I had the structure in my mind before I even put a word down, and that's what blows me. That's what blows my mind about this sort of stuff. Like if you haven't ever done it before, I know it probably seems really odd, but just sitting down and just whether it's someone's in music or whether you're into writing, whether you're into podcasts, whatever. Like just sitting down with a blank page and just seeing where it leads you, it's exciting. And that's where it leads you, like something like that. And whether people think it's poor quality poetry or whatever, I feel pretty good about it. I still read it and I don't even remember writing it. That's me from a few years ago. It could be anybody. Like when I read it, I go like, was that me? But I did it. And I did it in a quick period of time. So, yeah.
I think for me, it's always people are either going to like it or they don't like it. What
who cares? Who cares? I like it.
That's why I do the podcast. That's why I don't script the podcast. I go and just chat, and wherever it goes, it goes. And, if people want to listen, they listen. If they don't, they don't. That's cool.
I really appreciated that because it definitely went places I didn't expect it to go. So that's, I was thinking I should have done my reading on all this politics and stuff, which I've been trying to keep away from the news for the last sort of few months because I've just got other stuff going on. But it goes to show you can't get away from it because, at any moment you could be asked for an opinion on something. I think it's fair and right that you have one. I do agree 100%. With you on that. And express it if you feel comfortable. And so thanks for making me feel comfortable.
No, mate, I really appreciate you coming on, and glad you shared that with us at the end there too. I think that summarised the podcast really, really well. So I'll put the links in the show notes so you can check out the Venison Diplomat on Instagram. I do follow you, mate, and I do like what you post. So again, thank you for coming on the podcast.
You're one of the 50 that do, so that's nice.
All right.
I'm looking forward to
You did get rid of it and you're coming back.
Watching them ticking, watching them
you'll get more than me very, very quickly, so don't worry about that.
Well, I'll share them if I can. I don't know if I can make people like anybody, including myself. Thanks, Matt. No, it was awesome. It was really good fun, and look, I'm off to sleep training, baby duty now. So, mate,
have fun with that.
No talking on that one, just quiet.
Won't be as fun as the podcast.
No way.
So, all right, mate. Really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Bye for now. If you have a topic, guest, question, or any gear that you want to hear about on the podcast, shoot us an email, australianhuntingandbeyond@gmail.com. Alternatively, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.